Now, I'd like to start off by saying I've been humiliated a lot of different ways in my life. I don't know anyone who hasn't, but there's a very special kind of humiliation that only stretching can give you. You can be a grown adult with bills, scars, opinions, spiritual experiences, possibly even a podcast where you say things into a microphone, like you've survived a few dark nights of the soul and read at least 3 books. Then you sit on the floor, reach for your toes, and your hamstrings calmly inform you that none of that matters. They're not impressed by your resume. They don't care that you used to fight or be an athlete. They don't care at all that you meditate, pray, journal, fast, parent, suffer, heal, or occasionally stare at the sky like reality is trying to tell you something. Your hamstrings have one simple message. This is where we stop. I kind of hate it, but I also respect it. I respect any part of the body that still tells the truth in a world where the personality has learned to negotiate almost everything. Stretching is a weird practice because to some people it looks too ordinary to be meaningful. It doesn't have the same drama as a cold plunge, and it definitely doesn't have the aesthetic power of a 10-day silent retreat. It definitely doesn't have the motivational violence of a gym montage. Stretching usually looks like a person on the floor, making quiet, undignified noises, and discovering that their left hip hasn't moved the same since they were 27. I think that's why I like it so much. I also hate it sometimes, which usually means a thing is really useful. It can help the body, obviously, when done safely and appropriately. Mobility, tension, circulation, posture, all of these things are super important. But I think the thing I want to talk about, at least for this episode, is that stretching kind of exposes your relationship with control. You can't bully your way into real flexibility. You can for sure force a stretch. People do it all the time. They bounce, strain, pull, grimace, compete with the person next to them, and try to turn a hamstring stretch into some kind of scary inquisition. I mean, at least that's what I do. Maybe we get an extra inch, maybe we feel proud. Maybe nothing terrible happens that day, but the body still remembers the tone. It knows the difference between being invited and being invaded. I think that's the real subject here. Not really stretching as wellness content. I'm not trying to become a softly lit influencer, whispering that your psoas muscle is where your ancestors keep unprocessed trauma. I'm not saying all of your tight muscles are trauma, or that every ache is a message from Saturn. I don't think every hip stretch should come with flute music and some kind of discount code. I think sometimes your hips are holding emotions, though. Sometimes you sat like a shrimp for 6 hours answering messages and then wondered why you couldn't walk anymore. Or again, that might just be a me thing, but I sit like a shrimp a lot of the time. I think both of these things can be true. And while it's funny, I think there is something spiritually serious about this. Stretching teaches surrender because the body doesn't open through argument. It seems to only open through attention, patience, repetition, and trust. You can't really command it open like a king. Maybe it's something closer to a locked door that you find somewhere. I don't know where you find locked doors. Maybe in an old house. First you listen, then you test the handle. Maybe the wood is swollen from years of weather. Kicking it down might get you inside, but now you have a broken door and a weird story about your commitment to growth. I think my lower back understands this metaphor even if nobody else does. And I hate mentioning it over and over again, but I guess it's relevant. I spent a lot of my life in professional combat sports, competing and coaching, and fighting does teach many useful things: discipline, pain tolerance, humility if you're lucky, delusion if you're not. It teaches the body how to brace, how to absorb, how to stay awake under pressure. I think there's a ton of beauty in that, but there's also a cost. The nervous system is not always good at clocking out. You leave the gym, but some animal part of you still thinks someone might kick you. You sit at dinner and your shoulders are still prepared for war. You try to sleep while the body quietly starts shadowboxing. That isn't just a fighter thing. Plenty of people live that way without ever stepping into a ring or any kind of combat. They brace through things like family and work. They brace through school, bills, grief, relationships, loneliness, and the daily spiritual insult of checking your notifications. At some point, the body becomes fluent in defense. Then someone tells you to just relax. It's kind of a beautiful phrase, but completely useless, in my opinion. Telling a tense person to relax is like telling someone to become fluent in a new language during an elevator ride or something short. The body doesn't relax because it was told to relax. It relaxes when it feels safe enough, supported enough, and not rushed. Stretching can create that conversation, but only if you stop treating the body like an employee who's failing. I think this is where surrender gets misunderstood. A lot of people hear surrender and think it means some kind of weakness, like giving up or collapsing, maybe even becoming passive, maybe letting life do whatever it wants while you sit there and just watch. Surrender is the release of unnecessary tension. There's still dignity in it. There's attention and choice. A good stretch isn't dead or limp. It's alive, ambient, and responsive. You're not forcing it, but you're not absent either. You're staying with the sensation without immediately turning it into a battle. That's much harder than it sounds. Hold a stretch honestly for a little while, and the mind starts bargaining. How long is this going to take? Am I doing this right? Should I check my phone? Maybe I need a better mat. Maybe this isn't tightness. Maybe it's some kind of chakra blockage. Maybe I should start a whole new mobility plan on Monday. The mind would rather design a system than feel one stretch. That is how we are. We escape the present moment by trying to manage it. Meanwhile, the body is sitting there asking whether we can breathe into the back of the leg for 12 seconds without forming some kind of ideology. Stretching makes you honest because there's nowhere impressive to hide. You either feel what's happening or you don't. You either soften a little or you don't. You either respect the edge or turn the whole thing into another conquest. Yeah, I do like that word, edge. Every stretch has one. Not a wall exactly or a cliff. More like a place where comfort ends and you start learning. Stray too far behind it and nothing changes. Push too far past it and the body panics. Right near the edge, that's where the interesting stuff happens. You learn how much sensation you can stay with before the drama kicks in. That's an important spiritual skill. I know we're talking about calves and shoulders, so it may sound ridiculous, but the nervous system doesn't separate life into sacred and stupid as neatly as the ego does. The way you meet a tight hip may be related to the way you meet an uncomfortable conversation. The way you breathe through a stretch might resemble the way you breathe through not getting what you want. The way you force the body may reveal how you force your life. Some people leave the edge too early. Others blow right past it. Both of these patterns show up everywhere. The person who quits too soon may call it self-care, but sometimes it's avoidance. And the person who pushes too hard might call it discipline. Sometimes it's just violence with a solid playlist. And I've been there, so I can promise you it happens. Stretching teaches the middle path in the least glamorous possible way. That's useful because most of life isn't a dramatic breakthrough. Most of life is a series of small, repetitive moments where boredom tries to become your master. The body is tight and nothing poetic is happening. You're breathing. Time moves slowly. A part of you wants to escape. And that's the practice, not the big insight afterward. Just staying. There are also days where the lesson is humility. Maybe yesterday you felt flexible, loose, almost elegant. Today, the same stretch feels like an all-out war between your spine and the floor. Stress, sleep, and hydration changed. Maybe the weather changed and your nervous system voted differently. The body is always changing. I think that annoys the part of us that wants permanent achievement. I touched my toes once. Why do I have to keep being a person? Well, because that's the arrangement. You don't really become flexible and then retire from having a body. You keep relating to it. That's what the body asks from us. Relationship, not just a single big victory. This is one reason stretching can teach surrender better than most obviously spiritual things. You can fake a wise sentence. I think I do it all the time. You can fake a calm face. I do that too. You can talk about letting go while privately strangling life with both hands. But when the body is tight, it gives immediate feedback. If you push too hard, it resists. If you breathe, it may soften. Rush, and it closes. And if you return tomorrow, it will remember. I think that's at least a better teacher than most comment sections. There's also something odd about where tension lives. The body has a very weird filing system. You turn your neck and remember a fight from 3 years ago. You stretch your chest and feel sadness. Sometimes you open your hips and suddenly understand why people in yoga classes start crying and then pretend like they're just adjusting their towel or got sweat in their eyes. I used to think that was exaggerated. Then I lived with a body long enough. And I promise you, the body keeps receipts. Not in like a neat psychology way. I don't think every muscle has a folder labeled father wound, or first day of school, or email from 2022. I think that would be too simple. Still, a lot of people know the experience of touching a physical place and finding emotion nearby. Jaw tension from holding back words, shoulder stress from responsibility, belly pain from fear, hips from sitting, bracing, guarding, and clenching against the world. A stretch can become a kind of confession without language. You place attention somewhere and discover that you haven't really been living there. That's probably the most mystical part of this whole thing. Not really your flexibility, even though that's awesome, but the return of awareness to abandoned territory. A lot of us live in the head and rent the rest of the body out to stress. The head talks, plans, and performs. The body carries all of the weather, and stretching forces the mind to walk through the property again. Oh, the shoulders are angry. The calves are suspicious. The lower back has formed a separatist movement. You can't heal a place you refuse to visit. At the same time, stretching doesn't have to become a super big deal every time. Sometimes stretching is just stretching. I love that too. We know that not every breath has to become a revelation. There's something very spiritually healthy about doing a normal thing without turning it into content or giving it divine context. You stretch because your body feels better when you stretch. That's more than enough. The basic thing is enough. I think whatever these episodes are, this whole series keeps circling that truth because modern people are seemingly allergic to simple practices unless they're branded properly. Drink water sounds boring, so we invent a hydration protocol. Walking outside sounds too normal, so someone calls it ancestral locomotion. Stretch for 10 minutes sounds ordinary, so we add incense, a certification, and words that nobody in the room is pronouncing correctly. I say this as someone who loves the mystical side of life. I'm for sure the target audience for something I just saw called a lunar spine ceremony, which is why I think it's helpful for me to be supervised around marketing. Sometimes autism's very hard. Despite this, the ordinary doorway has to stay ordinary sometimes. Stretching doesn't care if you're special. It just asks if you're present. That's the most important thing, especially if you have chronic pain, injuries, or a complicated body. And yes, I also know stretching is not always the answer. Some pain doesn't want stretching, and some nerves don't appreciate the enthusiasm. I get that some bodies need strengthening, physical therapy, maybe medical care, heat, pacing, or simply not being treated like a motivational project. Anyone with serious back issues knows the feeling of watching a cheerful person online say, "Just do this one stretch," and immediately wanting to throw the phone at the wall. Or wait, maybe again, that could just be me, but I think you get the idea. So no, stretching does not fix everything. When it's safe and appropriate though, it can become a way of listening. For me, pain made the body impossible to ignore. 2 laminectomies will do that. Chronic nerve pain will do that. Some days my body doesn't respond to inspirational language at all. It responds to positions, pacing, rest, careful movement, and the humbling truth that whatever I used to be is not a substitute for a medical plan. Stretching inside that kind of life isn't about becoming bendy for applause. You're trying to develop a relationship with your body and staying there and staying with it even when it gets frustrating. That's kind of super important. A lot of people secretly hate their bodies. Not always aesthetically. I'm talking about functionally. The body is tired, tense, injured, maybe aging, unpredictable, and of course needy. It interprets our plans and refuses to perform the identity that we've built for ourselves in our heads. Stretching can be one small way to stop treating the body as an enemy. It's not like the body becomes easy, but through stretching, you approach it without contempt. There's a huge difference between discipline and contempt. Discipline says, we are going to care for this. Contempt says, you are disgusting until you obey me. Many fitness cultures confuse the two, because contempt can produce short-term effort. Shame can get people moving. Fear can create compliance. And vanity can build routines. But I promise you, the body knows when it's being hated into shape. Eventually, that cost comes due. Surrender and stretching means I stop treating the body like a disobedient object. I start treating it as a living part of me with information that I might not necessarily like. That doesn't mean softness only. Some people need more toughness, not less. They need to learn that discomfort will not kill them. Effort is not oppression, and the body is capable of more than the mood predicts. The other side is also true. Toughness without listening is essentially stupidity with a slightly better posture. Stretching exposes that line perfectly. You have to show up. You have to stay. You have to breathe through discomfort. At the same time, the body simply won't trust you if every session feels like a raid. The balance is subtle, and that's why it's helpful. A good stretch teaches firmness without aggression. It teaches softness without collapse and effort without conquest. That state is pretty rare now. Most people bounce between overstimulation and shutdown. We are either working, reading, scrolling, or lying under a blanket while the phone pours little pieces of the world straight into our mind. The middle state is harder to access. Awake, but not frantic. Relaxed, but not dead. Present, but not performing. Stretching can put you there, especially when you do it without recording yourself, without trying to look peaceful, or without turning it into a new personality. That imaginary witness is everywhere now. Even alone, people perform. Sometimes we stretch and a part of the mind wonders whether the scene could become a real. Is the lighting good? Do I look like someone with a regulated nervous system? Maybe you wonder if you should own more linen. How many followers does inner peace usually get? I know everyone doesn't think like that. Less than outrage, but better merch. This is why the sacred practice may need to be unrecorded. No proof, identity, or announcement. Just you and the stubborn geography of your own body. I think that's the real offering. Doing something good without turning it into evidence. Stretching also teaches inner consent. A lot of people have broken a consent system with themselves. They override subtle signals constantly. They say yes when they mean no. They work when they need rest. They smile when they're angry. And they ignore pain until it becomes loud enough to ruin their whole day. In a stretch, subtle signals matter. A small sharpness means back off. Warm intensity may mean stay. Numbness changes the plan, and breath holding tells you something. The body gives data before it gives disaster. Learn to hear early signals on the mat, and maybe you hear them earlier in life. Maybe you notice the conversation is becoming too much before resentment forms. Maybe the job is draining you before burnout becomes your entire personality. Maybe a relationship asks for a version of you that only exists when you abandon yourself. Or maybe you notice that you're tired before you become cruel. This is how small practices travel. What you learn in one place starts appearing elsewhere. As above, so below. I don't want to turn the hamstring into a guru, though. The hamstring is not a guru. It's a hamstring. But God uses stranger messengers than tight connective tissue. I've received much worse guidance from seemingly more official sources. Another lesson here is that progress is often invisible while it's happening. Stretching improves through tiny increments. One day the breath drops deeper. Another day the shoulder releases. A week later you notice sitting feels easier. Months later, a movement that used to feel hostile becomes normal. Nobody claps. I wish they did. There may be no dramatic before and after. I think that's good for the soul. The ego loves visible progress. I know mine does. It wants transformation. It can measure, photograph, caption, and compare. Stretching can be measured, of course, But the more important changes may be internal. Less panic at the edge, more trust, better patience, a softer relationship with discomfort, maybe even a little less self-insult when limitation appears. That last one is a major one for me. Many people encounter a limit and immediately turn it into an identity. Maybe it's that you're broken or stiff or old or not athletic. Maybe you say your body's useless. Those may feel like observations, but more than often they are just verdicts. Stretching invites a better sentence. This is where I am today. No drama, no fake positivity, no self-hatred, just location and presence. From there you can work. You can't really work honestly from fantasy. You also can't work gently from hatred. All you can do is start with the truth that is available. Today the body is tight. Maybe the nervous system is guarded. Today the back needs respect. Maybe 20 seconds is enough. Tomorrow may be different, and that's really how relationships work, right? It's not a failure. The same sentence works everywhere. This is where I am today with grief. This is where I am today with prayer. This is where I am today with God. You can't surrender to reality while arguing with where you are. A lot of spiritual frustration, I think, comes from people trying to surrender to the life they think they should have, not the life they're actually standing in. They want peace, but not this body. They want devotion, but not this schedule. They want discipline, but not this nervous system. And they want healing, but not this slow, humiliating version that includes water, sleep, stretching, apology, and finally responding to that message. Stretching starts with the available body, not the fantasy body or your old athlete body or the future optimized body, just the one you have right now. The one with the tight hip, the annoyed shoulder, the scar, the nerve pain, the weird clicking, and the breath that doesn't always know how to descend. You meet this one. That is surrender. Not approving of every sensation or pretending pain is a gift. That can become cruel very quickly. I think surrender means the argument stops long enough just so the relationship can start. The body says, here, and you say, okay, here, and then you breathe. Breath is so important because a stretch without breath becomes a negotiation under pressure. Long exhale, softer jaw, less performance. You don't need to make it mystical, just stop holding your breath so long. It's not a contest. The body may still not open. That's totally fine. The practice is not to get what you want every time. It's to offer conditions of safety and see what becomes possible. That phrase is so important and underrated. See what becomes possible, not demand or guarantee or conquer. Just see. This is hard for people used to making things happen. Fighters, parents, entrepreneurs, students, caretakers, anyone who survived by forcing outcomes. You learn to push because pushing worked. Then life brings you to places where pushing makes everything worse. Sleep is like that. Grief and faith are like that. I think love and healing are also often like that. Stretching gives you a kind of physical rehearsal for not forcing the unforceable. You still show up. You still participate. Conditions are created. Something beyond your direct command responds, or it doesn't. That's very close to prayer. And I'm not trying to say stretching is a religion, although sometimes it is, but the structure feels familiar. You arrive and become honest. Control loosens and attention is offered. Then you wait. Something may soften, or it may not. You return anyway. I think that's a decent description of more than half of my spiritual life. Some days in prayer, nothing happens that I can feel. The mind is noisy. The heart is dry. My body is restless, like it is right now. There's no inner choir or warm light or cinematic sense of being held. Just me, a creature, trying to remember the Creator without turning the moment into the same thing I turn all the other moments into. Stretching has the same humility. Some days the body opens and some days it doesn't, but you keep returning. The repeated return changes people more than peak experiences. Peak experiences are powerful, but they're unreliable as a lifestyle. Most of the path is maintenance. Just plain old boring faithfulness, small acts of care, and the unglamorous tending of the vessel. A person who stretches for 10 minutes regularly may learn more patience than someone who collects huge insights for years, but never changes how they inhabit a regular Wednesday. I know that's a little harsh, but I do stand by it. The body asks for consistency and doesn't really care about mythology. Just do the stretch, gently, and then come back tomorrow. There's no need for a huge announcement. There's a pattern in me that wants every practice to become intense. If I stretch, I want a plan. If there's a plan, I want improvement. Once the improvement appears, I want proof. And after proof, well, then identity follows. Suddenly, a 10-minute evening stretch becomes some kind of sacred mobility routine, and then usually I need someone to confiscate my mic. I think simplicity has to be protected. Touch the floor, breathe, stand up, make tea, go to bed. That might be enough. Maybe that's surrender too. Allowing enough to be enough. I think we live in a culture of escalation right now. Everything becomes optimized, monetized, branded, and turned into a system. Even relaxation becomes a project. You can't just lie on the floor anymore. Now it's nervous system regulation. You can't just take a walk. You can't sit quietly without a name, a lineage, a timer, or a thumbnail of a monk staring at a galaxy. Making fun of this because I'm vulnerable to it too. Too much. More than I would like. The ordinary practice never needs my decoration. Stretching might teach surrender because it refuses to become more exciting than it is. Silent, physical, repetitive, and honest. That's enough. There is one more uncomfortable part. Stretching shows how much aggression you aim at yourself in the name of improvement. You're in the stretch, and a tone appears in the mind. Come on, you should be better than this. Why is this hard? You used to be flexible. What's wrong with you? That voice may have built things in your life. It may have helped you survive, train, work, prove people wrong. I won't pretend like it's useless. Many harsh inner voices start off as crude protectors. But the same voice that got you through war may not be the voice that leads you into peace. Stretching asks whether you know how to encourage yourself without abuse. Can you ask more from the body while staying kind? Can limitation appear without insult? Can discipline exist without becoming your own prison guard? The body won't surrender to contempt. It may comply for a while, But compliance isn't trust at all. Eventually the system tightens, collapses, rebels, or just goes numb. Trust grows slowly. You show up without violence. You respect the no. You celebrate the small opening and stop before damage. The next day, the body has a reason to believe you. Imagine treating the soul that way. The anxious, angry, and grieving parts, and the childish part that still wants reassurance, maybe the ambitious part that wants proof, and the lonely part that checks the phone too much. Maybe surrender isn't telling those parts to shut up. Maybe it's just creating enough safety that they no longer have to scream. And I think stretching gives that lesson a body. A tight muscle isn't evil. It may be protecting something, compensating for something, or responding to injury, habit, or time. You don't have to hate it. You have to learn what kind of conversation it's willing to have. Some parts open through warmth. Others need rest, strength, help, or time. People are like that too. This is why the episode cannot become a command to stretch like a good spiritual citizen. Some people should stretch today. Some people should rest. Some of you should maybe call a physical therapist. Others should walk. And others maybe stop watching videos make them feel broken because they don't have the mobility of a mountain goat. The practice is not the shape. The practice is the listening. A person sitting in a chair, gently turning their neck with full attention, may be doing more real spiritual work than someone folding themselves in half while secretly trying to win yoga. Nobody wins yoga, by the way, although many have attempted it in tight pants. I've tried to win stretching too, mostly internally. There's still a competitor in me that wants to turn every edge into a scoreboard. Old wiring, I guess. Maybe useful at times, but less useful when my opponent is my own hip flexor. Now I try to ask a different question. Not how far can I go? More like, can I stay here without making this ugly? That question travels well. Can you stay in this feeling without making it ugly? What about, can you stay in this conversation without making it ugly? Can you stay in this uncertainty without grabbing a fake answer? Can you stay in this season without turning against yourself? Can you stay with God's silence without deciding that you've been abandoned? I don't know. These are hard questions. I think stretching might teach surrender because it trains our nervous system to remain without conquering. Then, when it's time, to stop without resentment. And that connects to the last thing I talked about, it's the last thing I talked about when I recorded this, but it was about leaving before you resent someone. I think I'm building a kind of weird curriculum. Basic things, tiny practices, no thunder. Just a person slowly reclaiming life from compulsion, reaction, and the need to dominate every moment. The stretch doesn't care about your timeline. I think that's good. Your timeline might be imaginary. The body changes at the speed of tissue, trust, chemistry, and repetition. The soul might be similar. We demand spiritual transformation on the schedule of an app download, and then feel betrayed when healing moves more like a plant. Plants don't care about your content calendar, and neither does your nervous system. I think there is a mercy in slowness, though, if you stop treating it as failure. A slow stretch says, stay here long enough to tell the difference. Intensity and danger are definitely not the same thing. Neither are discomfort and damage. A warning is not weakness. I think discernment begins in small places. Should I push? Should I wait? Should I stop? Should I breathe? Should I return tomorrow? Those are all spiritual questions disguised in gym clothes. The practice for this week could be simple. Pick one stretch or a gentle mobility movement that you feel is safe for your body. You don't need a whole new identity, no yoga plan, just one movement. Hold it long enough to notice your mind. Do you rush? Do you force? Do you get bored? Do you insult yourself? Do you leave before anything can happen? Do you push past the body's clear no because you want a result? Study that. Then try again, a little cleaner. Breathe if you can. Let the exhale be easy. Keep the jaw soft. Stop before sharp pain. Give the body a little evidence that you can be trusted. That's the assignment. Not to become flexible, but to become trustworthy to yourself. There's a big difference between that. A person can fold in half and still be at war with life. Another person can barely reach their knees and can be practicing real surrender because they're finally meeting the body without violence. So stretch, maybe. Or don't stretch if that's not what's right for your body today. But find one place where you're forcing what should be invited. Find one place where your ego is trying to pry open a door that needs patience. Find one place where your body has been saying, please slow down, and you keep replying with motivational quotes. Then listen, not forever or perfectly, just once. I promise you, the body is not trying to ruin your spiritual life. It may be trying to teach you the part of surrender that your mind keeps skipping. This has been Idiot Mystic. Now I'm going to go negotiate pretty respectfully with my own hamstrings. We have a very complicated relationship. I'll see you soon. Take care of yourself, please.